Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It is Monday, May 13th. It's 7 p.m. and it's time for the Lakewood City Council study session. To start us off tonight, we have an update on the United Way. And with that, we have Ms. Donna Pinto to give us an update. So thank you and welcome. Yes.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Donna Ponapinto, and I'm the president and CEO of United Way of Pierce County, and it's great to be here. I'm going to give you an update on what's been, because it's been a while since I have been here. I was looking at my calendar, it's been well over a year. So I thought I would give you an update. Yeah, I've got this PowerPoint. I may not go through, all the slides, but at least you have them as some background information in terms of what we are up to. I think the last time I was here, I don't know if I mentioned, that we had just finished celebrating 100 years. And last year we had a celebration, a gala, and gosh, that probably about 300 people or so were there, and we raised about $450,000.
Wow.
And this year we're 104, so we turned 100 in 2021. So we're still in the throes of COVID. So I think for those of you that are new to the council, United Way has a bold goal. We have a bold goal to lift 15,000 households out of poverty by 2028 and move them into self-sufficiency one family at a time. Our United Way, first of all, every United Way is different. We are our own 501c3s and have our own boards of directors, and have to each raise money for the work that we do in community within our communities. Our particular United Way, our mission is really all about uniting and mobilizing the caring power of the community to address those issues that we all care about in measurable and lasting ways. So those are the things that we are focused in on. We also focus on a population called ALICE, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with that term. It's an acronym: Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And those are individuals that are getting up every day working, but they are having a hard time making ends meet. And most ALICE families in Pierce County are probably working more than one job. There's 1 in 3 households. Actually, the new data is coming out by the end of this month. And with the new data, there's about 117,000 households in Pierce County that are considered ALICE. And so that's above the poverty level, but below 200% of poverty level. And the survival budget for a family of 4 in Pierce County is around, there's going to be some new numbers out, but the data from a year or so ago, it was $82,000 a year for a family of 4 here in Pierce County, 2 adults and 2 children that are in childcare. And I think we all know that childcare is probably one of the more expensive items in a household budget. And stop me at any time if you have questions. And once I get the report, the updated ALICE report, I'll get that to you. But also on our website, we've got, there's a lot of different reports that we have focused on the ALICE population. There's even a wage calculator tool. There's information on legislative districts, both at the state level and federal level, where you could go in and you can see in your communities, what the ALICE population looks like. So how does United Way serve ALICE? Because, there's obviously with COVID so much economic uncertainty, the climbing inflation, higher interest rates, so many things affect those Alice families. And United Way is working with our partners in community, including partners here in Lakewood area, to address Alice in three different, well, really 5 different ways, but 3 ways that I'll go into a little bit more detail. Basic needs, our Centers for Strong Families, which is our financial stability work, and our 211, which is our call center. So with the basic needs, it's really all about how we're helping people move to self-sufficiency. So we fund a small group of agencies that are really measuring their clients along a continuum. So from crisis to stability to self-sufficiency to thriving. And so that's the data that we collect, because we want to see the movement. We want to see our families getting what they need. So from this particular service to move from one point in time to the next. So with basic needs, serving over 130,000 individuals getting access to food and shelter, and then the 11,000 individuals receiving culturally appropriate food and other types of supports. Then our South Sound 211 serves Pierce, Thurston, and Lewis counties. Here in Lakewood, there were over 10,000 calls into 211 for 2023. It may go up, it's probably gone up just a little bit. I'll be getting those numbers in hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But right now it's about 10,000 calls. So our South Sound 211, it's a call center, but it's so much more. We have, in addition to call specialists, we also have what we call navigators. So these are individuals that are helping someone, not just by giving them a phone number, but really helping them to navigate. Someone's calling in, for instance, because they need support with getting to and from transportation. We have a transportation navigator that is helping that individual figure out what's the best mode of transportation to get them where they need to be. It could be to work, a doctor's appointment, grocery store. And one of our relationships is, in addition to being with Pierce Transit, is with United Way Worldwide and Lyft. So our Ride United is a partnership with Lyft, and individuals can call in, and once the navigator has looked at the best possible way to help them in terms of transportation, if Lyft is one, our call specialists, they can actually set that up. We have access to the call system so that the client doesn't have to worry about any kind of coupons or vouchers or anything like that. So our Ride United has been, we actually were doing this before COVID, and then during COVID, the rides expanded out into this area. At first it was testing it just in some Tacoma zip codes, but now it includes, I believe, up to 13 cities outside of Tacoma. So this last year, 76,000 individuals accessed 211 in total, and that's between them calling in as well as going online. So anyone can go onto our system or onto our website, and just if they need assistance in a particular zip code, just putting that zip code information in, and will pull up different organizations in that particular area. I think the one challenge with 211 is capacity. A lot of times what's happening now is people know more about it, and that's a good thing. However, sometimes the wait times are a little bit longer. And when someone is in crisis, having to wait is not always a good thing. And that's something that we're working on, but we're trying to be real upfront of the fact that more and more people need those navigation services, which a 211 211 call typically should take 2 to 3 minutes. Any call center, that's kind of what they grade you on in the call center world. And we get dinged on this all the time because we have these navigators that are going to spend anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes or more, because they're actually walking someone through a process and getting them connected. So in addition to the transportation navigators, we also have behavioral health navigators. We have a partnership with Workforce Central, and we connect job seekers to Workforce Central's partners, and it's kind of a back and forth. They will refer individuals to us, and so you have two people then on each end that are working with working with that job seeker. Yes.
Of the 3,200 folks who were connected to transportation, roughly, how many of those weren't able to, find services through public transportation and actually needed to get something other than that, like Lyft? And what are the reasons? Why are, what are the gaps in public transportation that isn't being filled, I guess?
I don't know. I'm going to make some assumptions as to why, and I can certainly find out more information. So I think for some people, they don't have, their own transportation. They're not next to any kind of transit, where they can catch the bus. And so they may have some type of a disability, which what our 211 call specialist then does is works with Pierce Transit, and others. There's a whole network of transportation providers. And so they're just working with individuals to figure out what's the best transportation option for you. I don't know of, a lot of people struggle with transportation. I do know when we go out and do our community conversations and we're talking to folks in community, transportation is one of those issues. They just don't have it, and then they don't have access to it. So that seems to be, as to why, I don't know anything beyond that, but I can find out, because we do, the navigators would ask more in-depth questions.
Yeah, it'd just be good to know, we go through these, a lot of these things at the city and the state level, really, with, planning for density in certain areas and trying to get some low income, next to public transportation. So you'd think that we'd be able to, kind of further help those folks out that are going through some of these challenges if they were closer to transportation. So there's definitely a focus to, I think, kind of, help bridge some of these gaps.
Okay.
Thanks.
And then, so on this particular slide, these are the different kinds of services. So I mentioned the Ride United. There's also Single Care, which used to be FamilyWise, and is a discount prescription program that's open to anyone, even if you have health insurance coverage. You can access it. It's going online. There's a card you get with a discount number, and most major pharmacies accept it. And this last year was probably over $200,000 in savings for individuals in Pierce County on prescription drugs. So that's another resource for the community. And then the Family Resource Navigators, which really help families get connected to supports for their children. One of the other things that we've been talking about at 211, there's three numbers to, there's 211, which gets you connected to all the social services. There's now 988, which is the crisis support for individuals. And then of course, there's the 911 and the first responders. So the next is our Centers for Strong Families, and these are the organizations that are a part of our network. There's 7. Clover Park Technical College is one, and they have been a part of the network probably going on about 4 years. We started all of this in 2016 with Goodwill and Sound Outreach, and Clover Park was probably the third that came on board in part of the network. At Clover Park, we have Goodwill. They have financial coaches that are at Goodwill or at Clover Park, and then working with the school and the students that are in the various training and work programs. So our Centers for Strong Families is all about focusing on helping individuals grow wealth, build wealth. They do it through what we like to say, learn it, earn it, keep it, and grow it. There's three legs of the stool. One is employment coaching and training. The other is around income support, so are folks leaving money on the table? And that could be both public and private. So with, with public supports, and I didn't bring these numbers with me, but there are millions of people that don't access any kind of public support, and they may be eligible for it. And they don't do it. You would think that they don't access it because of stigma, but it's more because of just the hoops that you have to jump through to get access to any kind of food assistance, housing, or childcare. And then the private benefits, what we find out are a lot of people don't take advantage of employer benefits. So if an employer has a 401, 3B or 401k and for-profit, there a lot of times employers will match that, and you have individuals that don't. I mean, I can tell you from experience in my United Way, we put in a percent, I think it's 5%, that we put in regardless of whether or not an employee puts something in. And we've got employees that don't put anything in, and it could be matched. So we try, but those are the kinds of things that we're looking at to help people realize you're leaving these things on the table.
Mm-hmm. I'm just curious as to the hoops that they have to do. I don't like going online to do anything because it's too complicated for me. But is there anything in the making to help smooth those out or navigate people through those things?
Through the income supports and
Mm-hmm.
yes, and that's part of the Center for Strong Families. So you've got financial coaches, and these are individuals that have financial backgrounds. So one of the things that we have made really clear in our network that if you're going to be a financial coach, you need to have a financial background.
Mm-hmm.
This is not about someone who doesn't have that background going and getting a training and getting a certificate. We do that for our financial coaches so that they can, get different kinds of credentials. But we want someone who already has that background as well. Yeah, and part of it is this whole idea of dignity. None of us in this room would go to, and my mother was a social worker for many, many years, but no one would go to a social worker that's that's gone to financial training for a couple of weeks. We're all going to go to a certified financial individual. And so what we want to do with what I love about this particular program is that it provides that dignity, and it's providing the same opportunities for low to moderate income families to be able to build their wealth. And then let's see, so the last leg of the stool is the financial coaching and the financial management and helping people understand their resources, help them, look at how they decrease debt on average. I think I have a chart. Yeah, here's one of the latest charts. So on average, debt decrease is about $20,000, for instance. There's some outliers, but still, that's significant. Average score increase in credit scores, 69 points. And we look at this on a 6-week basis. And update the information pretty regularly, and it is on our website as well. And then the average monthly income increase, I can't see it with the chair, but let's see, is $1,200. $1,200 is the average. increase, and that varies too as well. I have seen it go as high as a little over 2,000. So it just really depends from month to month. There's about 4,800 individuals that have been a part of the Centers for Strong Families since 2016. And now for Clover Park Technical College, let's see, we've got on average net worth increase for Clover for the participants in Clover Park is $15,000, or yeah, $15,000. And bundling is at 92%. And what that means, we look at how often an individual is going to see their coach. And so the studies and all of the evaluations show that the more something is bundled, so the more that someone is getting all three legs of the stool and they're sequential and bundled together, they're 5 to 6 more times likely to increase their income, decrease debt, and improve their credit scores. So, and it's, yeah, we're seeing it's working. We have 7 now, and we're gonna have an 8th, hopefully by the end of this year in the Franklin Pierce School District. So we've got one in Sumner Bonnie Lake at their family support center, and then we'll do that at Franklin Pierce, and then we're already in Bethel. That was one of our early ones as well. Okay, so these are a little bit old. This probably hasn't been updated. So yeah, right now there's about 48. That says 3,300, but the updated information, there's about 48. But it shows you the breakout by race and ethnicity, as well as how many clients are served throughout a year. So this right here, this is specific to Tacoma, but I thought I would share it with you because at some point, perhaps we'll be able to expand it. But this is our growing resilience in Tacoma, and what this is a guaranteed income initiative, a cash assistance initiative. We were a part of Mayors for Guaranteed Income, which is a national research effort, basically, to look at the efficacy of guaranteed income programs throughout the United States. So we were one of about 50 cities that participated in this effort. We had 110 individuals. They were Alice families, so they were working. Many of them were, again, working more than one job, and they received $500 a month for a year. We're working with the University of Pennsylvania that did all of the evaluation, the random selection, and we'll be getting that report in about a month. So it'll be interesting to see the overall outcome. We know that these programs work. There's enough research out there. We know in Alaska, for instance, they've been doing guaranteed income for over 40 years, I believe. And then other countries are doing it. And there have been pilots there's several other pilots here in the state of Washington that are run through workforce, in Seattle, the Workforce Development Council. They did a guaranteed project, as well as a couple of foundations of doing some pilots just to test them out on different populations, pregnant women, and then in the workforce central in Seattle, it's focused on individuals that are in their programs. Our particular program was random. They didn't need to be a part of a program. It was unconditional cash assistance that is not taxable. So I've explained that. So it's sometimes I pass up my own slides, but one of the things to note about any kind of a guaranteed income, it is a supplement. People don't quit their jobs for $6,000 a year, and it's meant to create a financial floor for families. We'll skip that because I mentioned that. And then the other thing that we do is advocacy. So we spend a great deal of time, we go down to Olympia, we have an advocacy agenda that really focuses on how do we make sure that we're lifting up the voices for children and families. So it could be everything from, social services supports, basic needs, to childcare, to the temporary assistance for needy families, and, how do we help families navigate all of those different services. And then I think I mentioned housing. So we do that. We're also doing more advocacy at the federal level as well, because, one of the things that I always say, if we're going to focus on moving families out of poverty, you can't do that without looking at the different policies and legislations that's out there that's meant to be helpful, but not always helpful for families that are struggling. In my opinion and many others, is they're set up to keep people right where they are, which there's plenty of people out there that are working really hard to make sure that families do have some options and some ability to move forward. And then other partnerships that we have, United Way doesn't do this work alone. We do lots of, I think, really strong work in the community, but we do it in partnership with a lot of other individuals, besides, we're our workforce partnership, working with the city and the county around coordinated entry and making sure that people get connected to shelter, temporary housing. We actually do have housing navigators at our 211 that get people into permanent housing. Our Hunger Free Pierce County, we know right now food insecurity is huge. And so we work with EFN and Nourish and the Puyallup Food Bank, as well as Good Roots, to what are the needs, where are the gaps that we need to make sure that children and families are getting nutritious food. That's it.
Are there any questions from the council? Council member?
Hi,
Hi.
thanks for coming out to share all this with us. It's important stuff that you're doing. A couple questions. So first, to qualify for these programs, are they generally income-based, as you said, where someone has to be between the poverty line and double that? Or is there other qualifications?
For which ones? For any of them or?
Yeah, any of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, well, so for the Centers for Strong Families, it's a program that's geared towards individuals that are that do have employment. Now, some of them may be in between employment and looking to skill up. So that might be a situation there. I would say Centers for Strong Families is not for an individual who's homeless, someone who's in chronic poverty, because with Centers for Strong Families, it's built on, an individual and family, they are at a place where they've got some goals and they want to achieve those goals. So it's meant to kind of help provide them with that coaching. It's more of a hand up and not a hand out.
Right.
And so that's what it's geared towards. I don't believe they do anything as strict as, you have to be between a certain, income.
Sure.
The guideline or the guardrails really for Alice families is that you're below 200% and above the 100. But we even know, just based on, when you think about it, for if a family of 4, it's 82,000. Here in Pierce County, if you've got 2 kids in childcare, I mean, you're struggling. And the stability budget is about 132,000 for a family of 4, and that's probably still, I mean, you're able to maybe put some savings aside, so that with 211 anyone can call. in.
Okay, yeah, I was
with
gonna ask
2-1.
about the 2-on-1 program.
Yeah,
So that's something
2-on-1,
that-
you can call in. With the other program, well, when we're helping someone, figure out if they're eligible for any benefits, those all,
Right, they vary depending.
yeah, they vary
Okay.
just depending on the regulations.
Okay, and then how do people apply for these programs? Should I point them at United Way's website or give them
Yeah.
the phone number?
Call 211. A lot of the Centers for Strong Families are in communities where people hear about them. So you've got, Goodwill or Sound Outreach or, Clover Park. It's usually it's a trusted community entity. And, so like with the schools and some of the areas that we're going into now, those are the trusted entities. And we try to work with partners where the community knows about them because it's really a community-based kind of effort.
Okay. And then the GRIT program, I see you had a slide on GRIT 2.0 and that's expanded to looks like
Yes.
Parkland and Spanaway area.
Yes,
Okay.
it did. It's when did we get funded for this? It was 2023 in the state budget. There was a proviso, $1.9 million to continue to learn from the Tacoma effort, and then 2 zip codes in the Parkland Spanaway, the 98444 and 445.
Right.
So we have 175 individuals that are getting $500 a month through March of next year. We're looking at also, and this wasn't a requirement, but we're looking at a couple of different populations, those that are like furthering their education in some way. It could be getting a certificate or going back to, get an associate's degree. It doesn't matter what that looked like. And then those that might have been justice involved.
Okay. The question that follows that, of course, is what about Lakewood? Is
Yeah,
there
hey,
potential
you know
to
what? I mean,
expand?
what I'd love to do is eventually to see if we could expand it. Yeah, I mean, definitely. We, it's, their Representative Barry is trying to get a statewide, and it died on the floor. So what I'd like to do is to see if we can continue to test it in Pierce County and expand it. Because we know that there's portions of Lakewood and other areas that it would be good to start picking out some other zip codes. And they were single head of households with single head of households with children, 18 and under, or if the child has a disability, 21 and under.
I'm sure there's lots of residents here that could benefit from that.
Yeah, we had 2,000 applications, a little bit more than that, 2,500 applications and about, I think it was 1,900 that actually met the criteria.
Wow. Thank you.
Councilmember Bell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Donna. Thank you for being here. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
your presentation. I had a question on the ALICE program, and you said that a lot of the information may or may not be updated on the website, but I did notice under the household types, there's a huge disparity. I mean, it seems like the highest person who falls under that would be the single female headed with children. Are there special things that are doing for outreach for that group, or is there something specific that's being done within the ALICE program, since the numbers seem pretty far apart, and that's almost 60%?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of why we did the guaranteed income and focusing on that population, because we know during COVID, that was the population that was hit the hardest, single female head of households. Now, what we also found when we were doing the random selection is that there were single father, dad's head of household. And so we switched it from being just single female to single head of households. So we are looking, we're looking at that. We're looking at that through some of our single head of households with some of the equity funds that we're creating, especially in communities of color, where we know, again, during, during COVID, those were the communities that were impacted the most. So we're going to put some priority, not excluding, anyone, but putting some priority to those households. Now, with the guaranteed income, we didn't do any exclusion of any group. It was open. And I don't know what the demographics are for the 2.0, but the demographics of the first guaranteed income were pretty balanced and representative of the communities. And all of the information, the information that will be updated is the information where it will tell us the percent of ALICE households by each city.
Of course, we do have a need in Lakewood, and I think of Springbrook and Tillicum.
Yes.
It's a good place to get
Mhm.
started. We're doing a lot of work in there, and they've improved so much that any help we can give them would be greatly appreciated. I wanted to compliment you on the navigation piece, because that is a challenge for a lot of people, navigating through the process, even to get transportation, the bus routes and so forth. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yes. We won't wait so long next time.
I know, really, we won't. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next on the agenda is the Joint Planning Commission meeting. And for that, we're going to call on the co-chair of Phil Combs. Phil. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be here, and I'm not the only one. We have 4 others here, so pretty good representation. The 2 others who are excused is Chair Estrada, who's out of town, and also Commissioner Wallace. So we have pretty good representation. What I thought I'd tell you about is just what we've been up to this year, the work plan, and it's pretty basic. If you've seen our schedule for the year, it's about 12 items long, and we're on schedule with everything in there. And
Feel free to introduce your.
oh yeah. Should we have them introduce themselves? Is that all right?
Fine. You can come up.
Yeah, come on up. And they'll be really excited that they got invited. But if Commissioner Herr, if you just want to start there, and then we'll go around to Commissioner Larson and just introduce yourself. So we do have 4 new members, so it's good for everyone to meet everyone.
Good evening, Mark Herr.
Philip Lindholm, one of the new members.
Hello, I'm Ellen Talbot.
And I am Lynn Larson.
Welcome, all of you. So we're waiting to hear all the good plans that you have.
Well, I'm sorry?
We're waiting to hear all your plans, the great plans you have coming
Oh,
up.
it's exciting. The posse here, as we call ourselves, no, we've just been working on the original plan. We got everyone sworn in, set out the plan, then reviewed the city council's goals for the year. So we're tracking that. And then we also had housing updates, a 5-year plan, and we've also had shoreline management. But the big recurring theme is the comp plan. You probably are hearing a little bit about it as well. And so we are doing our homework to try and make sure that there's enough edits in there that it represents planning commission's take as well as city staff. And I think the city staff, and I give all props to our city staff who have been leading and doing all the heavy lifting for that. Bringing up the issues, flagging them, showing the changes and edits so that we can ask questions. And it's always tough because you get put through a grinder for, showing all your work. But it's actually very helpful because everyone can get on board and sync up, and great thing to be doing for everyone who's new, because whether you want to or not, get fed through a fire hose. And so you learn everything that happens in the planning commission real quick. So we have a few more things through the end of the year. We still have transportation and forestry, but the comp plan remains the big thing. These only happen once every 10 years, as you know now. And so it has to be good. It can be amended, but better to get it right the first time. So that's the state of affairs with us. I think the questions that we had, and I would ask the council, you know, what directions would you like us to be going in that may be different from what you've seen from us so far? I know that we did make a recommendation on the MFTE, RTA, you know, the change of the boundaries, and that got kicked back. And so if there's any counsel that the council would like to give us, we're welcoming that, and any other thoughts you may have. And questions, of course, feel free to ask anyone here.
Well, we appreciate the work that you guys do and the work that we do together. That's how we make it happen.
That's right.
Yes. So. Councilmember Pearson.
One of you guys turn one off. There we go. Thank you. So there's a couple new things that haven't been on Planning Commission's agenda before, in the urban forestry program implementation plan. So that'll be, I'm looking forward to what you guys bring forward for that. That'll be kind of fun, something new. With regard to the MFTE area, and you know, I guess I don't want to speak for council, but my, you know, vision of where that would be targeted to the downtown sub-area plan and not, you know, be expanding in other areas of the city. We're trying to, I think, you know, my vision for that would be to focus in the downtown where we want some of that type of development. We just heard about, you know, folks are having issues with getting to transportation. And so if we can really focus some of that development in the downtown where there is transportation, that, you know, hopefully, you know, people like, people aren't, you know, having to get rideshare or Uber or Lyft or whatever to take them to places they, you know, they'll be able to get public transportation and some of the services they need in the area that they're living. So.
Any other questions? Councilmember Marcelo.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak on behalf of all of council, but perhaps I can provide some counsel on why we pushed back on the MFTE thing. I think it was twofold. The first was there was a large community outpouring of folks that weren't aware of what was going on. So we wanted to see how we could improve our communications with the neighborhoods that are having changes go through. And the second was, as Councilmember Pearson said, really sort of focusing down and in the areas that we want to encourage economic development. And I like to say, using scalpels instead of shotguns, right? To really dial into where we want to promote things, doing what we can with what we have instead of trying to expand to larger areas.
That's helpful.
Oh. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would just agree. Again, everyone keeps saying I'm not going to speak for council, so.
Well, maybe between the three of you, you guys have spoken for council.
But I agree, and that is why it was sent back, is to take a closer look at that and to really focus on the downtown and to hear the residents and get back to them with some solid information to feel that they have a lot to go off of, and that, you know, that we have a really good, all the information that we need to make the best decision for the city. So.
I'm not going to speak for the council, but communication is an issue that we have. So the more that we can involve our residents, the better.
Yeah.
Because they can have some good ideas. Councilmember Boki.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Moss. Yeah, a couple of things. I try to go to as many meetings as I possibly can. I've recently been on vacation, but I think you're already going again Wednesday night. So want to tell everybody present, they work very hard. There's a lot of new people on there, great experience. They bring a lot of different viewpoints. And I think it's, the planning commission is so important, right? It's a legal body, and it's really comforting to know that there's a lot of conversation going on and a lot of real wrestling with the issues. I feel like that they've worked really hard on this. And so I think that for me, the comp plan clearly, right? This is every 10 years. So I'd barely started on the council when we did the last comp plan. I got the mailer in the mail. Our family got the mailer in the mail, talk about Lakewood's future. So, and my thing is I know we have a schedule and we have to have this turned into the state by X day. I don't know if we're 2 weeks late, if the world ends or anything like that. I would prefer a document that not only the council and you, but the general public has a lot of faith in. And I think that that's the test, right? I think that a few years from now, well, it's in our comp plan to, make every street 4 lanes wide, and people are like, you're knuckleheads, right? I mean, who approved this? So I don't know, she did. And so we have to have confidence. We have confidence in ourselves, go through it deliberately, and I think I know you will, and have some really good conversations about what that looks like, and then we'll take our crack at it too, and see where the changes have been made and various things like that, because it is we're required to do it, and there's more elements now to it, and it's really important that it all dovetails together, right? Because we have the climate part, and we've got, of course, everybody wants to talk about housing and what those things, the words matter, and what is said in those really does. Staff and the world is going to look at your comp plan every time. Transportation, I mean, you can't, everything's got to, well, is it in your comp plan? So very, very important. And I know you guys will do a great job with it, because I think you're very, very hardworking and very astute group. And I'm proud of the work that you do. So good luck with all that. Thanks.
Councilmember Marcel.
Thank you. Just thought of a couple other things that, one that we had pushed back for more review, and that was ADUs, the short-term rentals, right? That's another topic that's being discussed. And with all the state legislative changes to include housing density, what that means for parking in the city of Lakewood. I hear it from residents all the time. We're putting sidewalks down Nyanza. Everyone who currently parks along the road won't be able to. And then what does that mean as that expands to other parts of the city? How do we plan for that? So that's a concern I've heard from our residents.
Yeah, all great points. Sorry, I didn't mean to. Middle housing, ADUs, it's a high priority. It's something we have to solve. And I think everybody brings it, maybe a little bit different perspective too. And I think that's healthy. If you're in a unanimous vote, then maybe there wasn't enough debate. But I think that we do hear each other, and we don't have always the same opinion. To the comp plan, I can say that we are not experts in every item in there. So all of us, collectively have to put it in there, and also rely on city staff who has done a great job on it. And I think the one thing that I hope we can do is look at things that are not just requirements. I think what happens with city planning, comp plans in particular, is we go through and check every box, what are things we have to do, changes we have to make to become compliant. How do we turn this into an opportunity to really make something cool or better or unique or special? And how do we make Lakewood become this? And vision doesn't happen by just checking a box. It actually takes some collective effort. And so we all of us, everyone at the table here has some work to do on that. And hopefully our fingerprints on that will reflect it in the next decade. Specifically to the MFTE, I happen to work and have worked on that stuff for many years. And there's an age-old question. You don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. But I'm gonna just do this anyways, which is, in the last 5 years, how many 100+ unit projects have we done that are market rate housing in Lakewood? Tiffany, do you know? So is that a market rate, or is it, I think it's subsidized. So what I would look to you to do is think about why we have MFTE. Because if the goal is to build it a certain way, it's really just a tool for us to attract people who will build and who will put that money in and make an investment. And if no one's putting it in, you have to wonder, how well are we doing it? So that's one thing to just think about. I'm not saying that that area has to be expanded, but if same old doesn't work, and I do question the effectiveness of that tool. Other cities are using it all around us, and so then you got to reflect too, is there something we're doing that may be different, any obstacles we're running into? And all of us have to do that. It's not on you guys. I just say that out loud so everyone knows, because I deal with this up in Seattle, Tacoma, Tukwila, Kent. They all have these programs, and the ones that are most effective are the ones that really embrace it and try to use it. And then the ones that are not effective are the ones that don't embrace it or dance around it. And so I think we have to be somewhat deliberate in how we do it. If the goal for those by the state commerce department has put it together, and the reason we have it is for economic development first. Housing is also a goal for that. And so we want to try and solve housing, and we want to get economic development, and without programs signing up for it, it's kind of a tool we just don't get to utilize. That being said, it doesn't matter to me if it is expanded or isn't, but that would be one reason why you might hear a recommendation one way or the other. And so, any questions on that? Hopefully I wasn't too general.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So your opinion, is it the area or is it the tool itself? Because those are kind of two different things. You have the tool, and then you have the area that the tool is being used in. And it sounds like the tool is not working.
Well, the tool's working in all the other cities.
Yeah, but
So-
why is our tool different, I guess?
Well, that's a question we should all be asking ourselves, is why is it not effective here? And so if we're trying to say, well, we only want it right here, I'm not saying that we will get more, but it's possible that you do get some investment coming in. And if it's not that tool, what other barriers are there that may be preventing people to come in? I always think about it in terms of low-hanging fruit. And so if you have an investor or a developer who wants to come into a market and build something, which area are they going to go park their money in? And me representing Lakewood, I want to figure out, how do I get them to put it here? And of course, we want to put it in a certain spot. I would love for them to do it here. In fact, I'd love to tell them, this is what you got to build and how. Unfortunately, we don't get that. We don't get that privilege. That's up to the developer. But how do we get them into the door and into an area that we like? And if this area maybe isn't doing it, expanding it, doesn't hurt us, because it's just giving us a bigger opportunity. That being said, I'm not saying that our recommendation will be the exact same thing again. We got to look at it again. We did have 2 public meetings. Neither of them were attended. And so when I hear that there is feedback here and so on, I'm glad to hear it again, but to hear it more than once already is one of those things where I haven't seen that in other cities. So I think we have done a pretty good job, but I also am eager to hear what feedback there is and why, and hopefully, people understand what the program is. I think a lot of, like most things, people are not familiar with it. And so there's a little bit of uncertainty or hesitation about what it is and how it works and why it's even there.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, so I think what's been said is very true. And we did have a robust conversation about the conversation piece and the communication piece, and that was really important to us. We want people at our meetings. We want to hear from our neighbors. That's incredibly important to us. And as a new member, I can certainly say that it's very apparent to us that a lot of thought and care has gone into what we've inherited. These conversations are not new. They're new to me, but they're not new. And so I think we just try to really hold that carefully as we move forward.
Change the subject just a little bit about our relationship and how that works. Recently, you remanded an issue back to us that we had sent you on a 7-2 vote, and I would like to thank you for that. That's a much better approach, substantially improved from when, I remember it's been a year now, when the forestry percentage that we have worked a lot of time on to get right. And the lobby went directly to you and accomplished their goal. But in that, if that idea about remanding it, if there had been a discrepancy between what the Planning Commission said and what seems to be the case, I think we would have had a better result in that case. And certainly in this case, where we were talking about the individual boundary lines of the districts that were being expanded. And I'm perfectly willing to admit that I missed one of the lines until one of my neighbors brought it up to me. And so I was really glad to be able to see it again, because candidly I'd made a mistake. And I was one of the 5 that voted for it. So anyway, so thank you for that change in procedure, because I think it really, really helps our relationship and how we're able to recommend going things on in the future.
Any other comments? Please.
Thank you. I just also wanted to say that I definitely appreciate my colleagues' comments, and also add to the discussion that certainly MFTE has been a tool that we have talked about, but also one of the tools that the commission we haven't got to talk about yet, at least, and we have some update through the comprehensive plan update, but that is sub-area planning and the tool in and of itself that sub-area planning can be. And, downtown, the city just updated its downtown sub-area plan in 2019, which of course was at the advent of COVID. And so I look forward to implementing the downtown sub-area plan, because we haven't seen any results from that yet. And so I look forward to, providing insight to you all as to how we can strengthen and implement the downtown sub-area plan, and especially in combination with the TIF ordinance that you all just recently reviewed as well and passed. So those things together are, I think, two, heavy tools that really, the city staff has ahead of them. So I just wanted to put that out there as well, because I think, I look forward to definitely the developments and the projects and the capital plans coming out of those two efforts. Really, I think will help ground and establish and help bring to life the downtown that we all want to see. So, thank you.
I will share with you, I heard you say that you had your public comments and no one attended. We've been experiencing that for some time. You can have 3 or 4, and when it comes to the final decision, all of a sudden to get the message. So we struggle with that as well. Just wanted to share that with you guys. So are there any other questions? Do you have any more information?
Nothing more to report. I think that's it for us.
But I will just say that the different voices, new voices on any committee bring something to the table. So don't be shy to speak up because we need to hear your side of it as well. So, and we work well together. We look at each other as a whole. We don't do individually. We work together. So thank you guys so much for all you do.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Next, we have a review of the 6-year 2025-2030 Transportation Improvement Program. And for that, we have, yeah, you're not Mr. I'm like, that's not him. But so welcome.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, I'm presenting the 6-year Transportation Improvement Program for 2025 to 2030. This document's a planning document that the city uses annually and reviews annually to coordinate projects statewide for grant purposes. So the roadmap for this program is for us to pass this along in the next month or so. We've stepped back 4 weeks ago. We presented this to the Planning Commission. Now we move forward tonight with the presentation to you. From there, we move on to a public hearing scheduled for next Monday night, and then adoption if we get concurrence in June. This year, we're not planning on adding anything. It's full slate on what we already have in the TIP. We don't anticipate needing any other projects added to it that we would be applying for grants through 2030. So it's just strictly an update of what we've completed, kind of a situation there. With that said, I'll kind of go through some of the projects that we've completed over the last year, what we've got left to complete in the next year-ish, and then review the pavement management system before I kind of take questions from you.
Yeah.
Perfect. So going through the project, Steilacoom Boulevard, far west to Phillips. We've completed the design and right-of-way for that. We're looking to go to construction on the last stage of that within the next month or so. It's construction, by the way, meaning bid, not actually machines showing up and starting to take lanes. South Tacoma Way, 88th to North City Limits. We're looking at advertising that later this summer, early fall. Hipkins Road is currently under construction. Murray Road is kind of a holdover from improvements we made in 2010, as well as the DOT improvements. That's just kind of a cleanup deletion. JBLM North Access Improvement, that's Washington Boulevard, Gravelly Lake Drive, Steilacoom Boulevard, 87th to Custer. That's the construction portion of what we're doing this summer / winter. And Ardmore Whitman 93rd is currently striping right now as we speak, as well as the signal will be installed later this summer. Idlewild 112th, we plan on advertising that in late winter coming up. Far West Drive, 112th to 91st. We advertised that and you guys awarded that last Monday night. 84th and Pine, the signal will show up again later this summer. And the last one on the list is the South Tacoma Way overlay, which is scheduled to move to construction in about a month and a half. And it'll be a quick paver in the middle of the night later this summer. Just kind of going through some slides of some of the improvements to kind of show what's been done. This is Gravelly Lake Drive in Washington. The 10 roundabouts we installed out there. As you know, there was illumination, storm drainage, sidewalks on that one. Ardmore Whitman 93rd, they're striping that tonight. Paving's done. The signal will show up probably around August. So be glad to have the signal in versus the awkward four-way stop that sits there now. Hipkins Road, new roundabout. This photo shows the new roundabout construction that was completed last week. They're paving that starting today, the base lift of asphalt, sidewalks over the next couple weeks, and then they'll come back, top the paving off, and the north segment of that will be completed. Yes, the oak tree up there has been saved in the right-hand corner there.
Councilmember Bell?
So my dad just asked me yesterday, when will it be totally done, open, all that stuff?
Totally done. So they will finish the northern portion of it that's currently under construction now. Then they have to flop to the south to do the water main, and we're gonna re-overlay that portion. So done, probably July, August.
Thank you.
But the northern portion will open up prior to that, probably about a month and 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks. 84th and Pine, we've finished the paving out there. There's a little bit of striping, and the traffic signals show up probably about the same time as the Ardmore Whitman 93rd. Kind of going into the pavement management system we have here to kind of show you where our pavements sit. Here's a historic, kind of the last 5 years where our pavement trend has kind of been going overall. PCI, Pavement Condition Index. You know, we rate our pavements on a scale from 0 to 100. 0 is you don't want to drive on it. 100 is, you know, it's brand new road, kind of like Washington Boulevard. You can see the downward trend a little bit, but it's kind of flattening off. It's actually not that bad. That's kind of not a bad place to be at all at 76. I'll show you on the next slide that the comparable agencies, we sit kind of in the upper portion of the middle on comparable agencies that have kind of got PCIs ranging from 45 to 87. Pierce County spends a lot of money on their pavement. The big takeoff from this slide is really the portion on the right, in that all of our streets, whether they're collectors, local, principal or minor arterials, are kind of roughly in the same area. And you really can kind of see that driving through town. The local streets are holding up pretty well, almost as well as the rest. This last slide I included because it really does show you that the green, and this is kind of difficult to see, but the green portions are in very good, you know, by lane miles are in very good condition. You can see that the overwhelming majority of our roads are in very good condition, and very, very minor amounts are in very poor condition. So it shows us that you guys are spending your money pretty well for what you've got going on. With that, I ask any questions of you.
Any questions from our council?
Absolutely.
I have a specific comment about, or question, concern about the Far West project that's going to go on with the sidewalk on the west side. And so there's a lot of pedestrians that use Far West going down to Fort Silicon. They go to the college there, up and down Lakes, you know, to Lakes High School. The Lakes High School has a pedestrian crossing that's it's signed and striped across the road. And then there's another crossing, it's just signed at the main entrance and the intersection of Mount Tacoma Drive Southwest that goes like kind of the back way to Stillicum. So there's a lot of people that could come and do come from like the Stillicum side to go to the park there. And there's no striped pedestrian crossing. I would just encourage you guys to take a look about how to get folks across the road. And I do realize that it's a, you know, big road. People are routinely doing 45 miles an hour through there. So that's just a comment to take into consideration during design. So.
Yep, absolutely.
Mr. Bopi?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Ross. At the risk of rehashing, and I know you're not here to rehash all your projects, but Ardmore and Whitman, great job. I did notice because the roads are closed and so I had to go around and then I saw him painting. No lights were put in, no pedestrian lights or whatever you call those. And we were informed, there was, the question came up, I thought we were putting those in everywhere. And another member asked, I think, and it was mentioned, we felt there was sufficient lighting, but that you were gonna add more lights on wooden poles. So explain to me the process that you use to determine whether or not you're gonna put in new lighting. And then talk about how many poles you're planning to put in on the Ardmore Whitman project.
So the first answer your question, explain the process we go through. So there are target light levels depending upon, and we measure them in foot candles. So we have software programs that we put lights, throughout, to do a design on it throughout the corridor. I can't speak to exactly what was followed through on this, as I just took the project over as it was going to construction. So I don't know what happened during design on it, but typically they go through and look at each individual to ensure that we're hitting at least 0.3 foot candles, which would be the minimum for this type of area, for a, close to the downtown corridor. I can tell you that we are adding 5 new wooden poles on Ardmore and adding 4 new streetlights on Whitman, which have yet to be put up. All of those have yet to be put up. Existing lights on aluminum poles exist on 93rd. That is what I can tell you we are moving forward with as soon as TPU gives us a permit to do so.
Okay, so you'll be putting them on poles that already are out there, or are you gonna be putting new poles in? or-
So the 4 on Whitman are going up on PSE poles, which do not have lights on them currently. PSE is on the west side of Whitman. Their lines are not energized, but they're going to energize them for us, and we're going to install lights on the wooden poles that exist out there. The lights on Ardmore the poles on Ardmore, excuse me, have not been retrofitted with lights in the past on the TPU poles because the poles are too crowded to accept them. So we need to install 5 new wooden poles on the south side of the road where the aerial isn't as crowded, and drag a line across. But we've done so in locations that their existing lines servicing the houses are there already, so it doesn't become so cluttered, if you will.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Marcelo.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Poxwinski, right?
Yeah.
Did I say it right? Troy?
Yep.
Thanks. Following the question that Councilmember Pearson had about Far West, I have questions about the Nyanza project as it's coming together. Are there plans to have any sort of pedestrian crossings along that whole stretch? Because as it is right now, there's no crosswalks or anything, and it's probably a mile and a quarter long, right? As we're going out to design, is that a consideration?
It is a consideration. We do plan on putting one mid-block crossing with enhanced crossing, whether it's a rapid flashing beacon or a hawk signal. We're looking at multiple options for that.
Yeah, I know it's
as well
early
as the
to.
cost.
to talk
It's early, and we do plan on being before you guys on June 24th for that project, as well as the South Tacoma Way project at a study session.
Great.
Just so you can take a look at it and see what we have before we move too far down the line.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So on the Ardmore and Whitman, is this going to be permanent striping going in, or has it gone in right now?
It's going in right now, yeah. A little bit Friday. They had a slow start Friday night, but tonight and tomorrow night, they'll finish up the permanent
And
striping.
then we're waiting for a signal there. Is that, what's the time frame on that?
So the time frame on that, the signal bridge, it's a bridge itself, kind of like we have out on Pack Highway and Bridgeport or Gravelly and Bridgeport. It's just it goes across the intersection. That will arrive in late July, and they'll start assembling it. They'll need to close the road for about a week to assemble it, stick it up into place, and then put it into service.
Okay, thank you. And then I was driving south on Whitman, and at the intersection there, I guess maybe it was the temporary stop bar, was set kind of far back, and so was the stop bar on 93rd, and I actually couldn't even see the car on 93rd because there's so much vegetation on the corner. So I just, you know, if you haven't been out there, go take a look and see, make sure there's adequate sight distance, and that was a concern that I had when I was actually comparing the aerial of the old striping to the new striping, and the old striping was a lot different. It was at like an angle, so you could kind of come up further, closer to the intersection. And then the temporary striping was set like perpendicular to the center line further back. So you were stopping much further back and couldn't, you know, see around the corner as well. So just some concerns there, just.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out there and take a look at that tonight, but the reason why it's set so far back is because of the signal bridge and being able to look up and see as you're moving. So that's kind of why the reason why that particular one is set so far back.
Okay.
But I'll go back and look at tonight about the sight distance on that particular corner, southbound to the eastbound kind of direction. It does seem like that's a little bit of a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Bulkey.
Okay. Couple of questions and back to Ardmore and Whitman. To dovetail on his comments, the bridge, and I've explained this to people, but I need you to help me one more time because I do my best to answer the question. The project goes on for months and months and months. It actually didn't take that long, right? Ardmore and Whitman didn't take that long. It went on for a few months. It gets basically done. And then people are like, well, what's with the stop sign? Well, they're putting in the light, but the light can't be, the bridge or whatever they come up with can't be done until after you're done, completed the project. Is that correct? And why is that?
So the lead time on the bridge is about 10 months.
Okay.
So that's the whole reason behind it, 9 to 10 months. It just, there's one person making these out of the Midwest and there's back
I think
and
I saw a
forth.
truck when I was back
Yeah.
back in the south, and I saw someone driving.
So there's quite a lead time on these things. It used to be a year plus. So we were left with the option of, do we reopen the road or keep it closed under this condition? And people have been cutting through either way. So they're kind of using it anyway. So we just made the conscious decision to open it under the stop condition.
So it's just really a supply issue. So
Yes.
you ordered this quite a while ago.
Well, the contractor ordered it as soon as within 5 days of the execution of the contract, they give us documents for the shop drawings of it. We go back and forth a little bit and it's approved.
So are
Before they broke ground.
are the controllers available then too? And
Yes, that's at the county shop being
Oh,
tested
okay.
right now. So it's ready
Okay.
to go as soon as the bridge shows up.
okay, and then it'll dovetail into our system here.
Foundations are in, they literally just need to assemble the bridge, which comes in pieces, and then put it up.
Okay, and so the controllers are already here. We don't have to worry that they're not here, or a controller.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Pavement index, when should we start to worry?
Weston, you want to field that a little bit? Be a better question for you.
That has the other agencies. Or one of the trend slides. So the short story to answer the question about PCI and when we should worry about it, 70 is the magical number. So once you hit 70, you drop off very quickly in your PCI. So it goes from a fairly flat slope to a quickly downward trend. And in that comparison slide of other agencies, if I remember correctly, Tacoma was 45 and Seattle was 63. They're in a world of hurt. You're into major rebuild. Once you get below 70, you can't overlay the pavement anymore. You have to go in and rebuild it. And that's, many, many times. I remember when we hit $1 million a mile to do a road, and now we're, getting into the multi-million dollars a mile to do principal arterial work for everything that we end up doing. So if we can keep chip sealing, keep overlaying, keep patching, keep doing that maintenance work,
as well as our capital program will stay in that kind of mid to high 70s.
So between the pavement management program or the pavement, we do chip sealing plus we do this paving thing, which is kind of neat because you guys get to do whole sections of road that have deteriorated, but not a huge set, right? It's like 30 feet or something in some cases. So we've invested a lot in roads.
Correct.
We've been chip sealing, we've been doing that pavement work. And the number is gliding, maybe, it was 81 in 2019. So I'm saying, well, you've had over a 5% drop. You've had a 5-point drop, which is about a 6% total drop in that time period. You know, what's happening?
Right. So what's happening there is it's kind of a percentages game. We have 436 lane miles, and I think it's 179 center lane miles. And so we can do a big project like Washington Boulevard and Gravelly, and that really bumps that section up. But it's only, 2.5 miles, so double that. It's actually, it's a little bit more than 5 miles of pavement, but it's relative to the 436 lane miles. So as a percentage, it's fairly small. Yeah, so that's what's going on there. So if we continue with our maintenance, the other thing that's not reflected in those numbers is your PCI is really a living number. It's constantly moving. The software will downgrade you from year to year through its learning of kind of how our pavements perform. However, between our rating years, we build these other projects. And so some of the ones that are coming up that I'm excited about is Custer Road from Bridgeport to 75th, and that one is in really poor shape. So all of a sudden, even though I know it's a fairly short section of principal arterial, but it's probably the one that showed up in that other slide of, in poor condition. As an example, we've fought that one for a long time. So what I would summarize and say is, yeah, keep up the investment on the capital, keep up, your patching, your chip seal. And then some of our overlays are grant funded, like the one Troy's mentioning now happened this summer. That was a PSRC funded overlay of South Tacoma Way from 96 to Stillicum, and now knock out some lower PCI number arterial. But it's just a constant, maintenance that we have to keep on top of.
So the chip sealing, which wasn't done, which stopped for
Correct.
like 5 years during the Great Recession, and I'm throwing out a 5-year number, correct me if I'm wrong. We went back into dipped our toe. I mean, I guess we are on what kind of schedule? Just remind me. It's
So we do have a schedule. Typically, you want to have kind of the industry standards about a 7-year cycle on your chip seals. We're a little bit more than that. We keep hitting the cities. The first one was up in the Oak Brook area, actually, is where we started it. And as you mentioned, the city kind of took a break from chip seals because we had the big failure on 100th in 2006. And then we had a few more chip seals, and that was hard to get, like you say, during that Great Recession. We took that break, and then we came back where the city contracted that work ourselves. And actually, Troy's opening bids tomorrow on the current chip seal program for this next cycle. And that'll be over here on the other side of Gravelly between Town Center and Lake Stillicum. It'll be in that area of the city.
So are you on a 10, 12-year?
It's about a 10-year cycle,
10 year.
correct?
Okay.
And the one thing, you and I both live out in Oak Brook, and I don't say it to my wife anymore, but when I drive, I do look at the pavement. It's actually holding up pretty well. You'll see some areas where it'll look like it's torn, and that's from when it's really hot. People back out of their yard or out of their driveway, and it tears a little bit. But by and large, the chip seal's holding up very well on our local streets. I'm pretty impressed with it. So that program has been very successful.
Okay, good. Thank you. And do you know offhand, you mentioned chip sealing, the paving improvements, we've probably seen it. Where are you gonna do those this year? Do you know yet?
So for this summer.
The pavement patching or whatever we call it, I'm not giving it the right name.
Yeah, so pavement patching is, we talked with O and M, asked them where are the patches that are a little larger than they want to tackle. And Troy's actually putting that together. I think bidding is in the next 2 weeks. Yeah, so he's on the cusp of putting that one out. So we do that patching, but it's typically to help out O and M as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you. I had just one last comment. So I drive down Washington and Veterans quite regularly. And I noticed that some of the roundabouts are striped with a single yellow stripe on the inside, and some are not. And looks like you're smirking, so I'll let you fill us in on that. But if we do, have some striping and, they're the reflective, hopefully people might not run over the middle of them, I guess. I don't know what, but I'd like your comment on that.
So the reason why some of them have been striped and some of them not, last week, they were in those zones, the closed zones, and we were able to get a decent price for the contractor to put the plastic down. We got a separate price, and the price for the plastic was quite high. So what we're gonna look at doing is doing a paint with it for the county to go out and stripe this coming year, the other 9 roundabouts that are not in the Lake City area, including the ones on Veterans. We'll do the same with the new roundabout over at 87th and the park entrance there at Dresden and 87th, as well as the one at Northway. So those will all be striped.
So if you're paint striping in a roundabout versus putting plastic striping down, with all the turning movements, how often will you have to restripe a roundabout versus using the plastic?
Well, that's a great question. We're finding that even the plastic's not holding up great. If you'll notice some of the yield marks, the shark's teeth, as we call them, as you're entering the roundabouts, are starting to come up with, even though those are plastic. And those are quite expensive.
Okay.
We're looking at doing paint annually would be much, much cheaper than the prices we're getting.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
I just wanted to say thank you for the information because Ardmore is really dark. So going in with the lights is going to make it a lot better because there's quite a few residents through there. And my other question is, once you receive the bridge, how long does it take to install it?
It should take about 5 nights, although that's not a very aggressive. They should put it together a little quicker. That's his schedule. He told me it'd take about a week and a half to put the foundations in, and it was done in 3 days. So should be 5 nights.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Any more information you want to share?
Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Mhm. So the next we have the third biennial renewal of the review of the downtown suburbia plan, the package, and first biennial review of the station district sub-area plan. And for that, we have our long-term range strategy planner, Ms. Tiffany Spears.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. First, I'd like to just reintroduce, if you didn't already meet him recently, this is our new Community and Economic Development Director, Jeffrey Mack, and he is here to just start to see the ebb and flow of conversations at study sessions. So as the Deputy Mayor just mentioned, what we're doing tonight is taking a look at the 2 sub-areas, downtown and Station District, where the City Council has asked for periodic check-ins with you to see if the way the adopted plans, development codes, and SEPA planned action, meaning planning ahead for development so specific developments don't have to do SEPA themselves, are performing on the ground, whether what has been anticipated on paper is actually happening on the ground. This is the 3rd time for downtown, and it is the 1st time for the Station District sub-area. This is very similar to what I just said, but just the other reason why we're doing this with you this evening is because actually Wednesday night, the Planning Commission will be talking about the sub-area plans as well, and development regulations is the other thing on their plate for Wednesday. But as they are talking about changes related to the 2024 Comprehensive Plan and Development Regulation Update, we are hoping to have direction from you, whether there is anything specific in the sub-area plans that also need to be reviewed. And historically, there's been a request from the council to make sure we're closely watching what's happening with a couple of things. One is the transportation mitigation fee and how that program has been performing since 2018. And the other is whether there is actually new development coming in at all. So we'll be able to provide you with information on both of those topics this evening. This is the map that reflects the two sub-areas. Just a reminder, there is a third that's already been adopted and will be updated as part of the 24 process in Tillicum. But the biennial reviews at this point are requested for downtown and then Lakewood Station. So the goldenrod is where we're sitting right now, and Station District is the pink. Tying again to the 24 comprehensive plan process and how it relates to the discussion this evening, you'll recall that now the city is having to plan not only for an entire full number of housing units between now and 20 years from now, which is in the top table on the left, that 9,378, that's the total number of new units. But all of the remaining columns in that top table are new to the 24 process. And that's where there's this identification of the city needing to plan for and allow a certain number of units that will be affordable to the various economic segments that you see broken out there. The second table you'll see on this slide is related to how the total 2044 growth targets, both housing and jobs, relate to what's been planned for in the two sub-areas and then the rest of the city. So if you go across the top row, the total number is 9,378. You'll see in downtown, when it was adopted back in 2018, 2,257 new units were targeted in that area. In Station District, 1,772, which means out of the 24 full number, about 5,350 housing units need to be planned for outside of those two sub-areas. Same logic there for the jobs on the next row down. There's about 9,865 new jobs to be planned for by 2044. And we'll talk about this more, but almost 3/4 of the city's 20-year job target is focused in the downtown sub-area. Another 13% or so, 1,276 new jobs for the Station District, and then the remaining 1,270 would be elsewhere in the city. So to start with the downtown sub-area specifically, again, this was adopted in 2018, so appreciate that there are several council members here tonight that weren't involved in that process. So I'm gonna just do a high flyover of the idea behind that plan when it was adopted, and just make the comment that in the previous two biennial reviews that were conducted in 2020 and 2022, for several different reasons, no changes have been made to date to the downtown sub-area plan or its regulations. Where we sit right now is the three districts you see within this downtown sub-area each have a slightly different purpose. So the Colonial District is the colonial style commercial buildings, including the Lakewood Theater. And obviously this is where Motor Avenue has recently been improved. Town Center, where we're sitting right now this evening, is an auto-oriented shopping area right now, but the idea eventually is to add some significant housing here, as well as maybe some arts planning in addition to what's already in this part of the city. And then the eastern side is intersection of Bridgeport and 100th. It's large auto-oriented commercial centers and then smaller commercial properties along the arterials. There were overlay districts that were adopted as part of the downtown sub-area plan. And again, these are in colors here. The Colonial is in pink and it has its own design requirements actually. So when a development goes in there, they need to have a certain look in the building itself to be consistent with what is already there. In Goldenrod, you'll see the town center incentive overlay, and this was the idea of really trying to focus the most growth in the sub-area to within the town center. And so this does allow master planning as an option. I believe that's been mentioned in recent conversations at the city council regarding, for instance, the Alliance Residential Project. And then also the job targets are for the whole sub area. Really, the idea is hopefully to get them in town center because that is the closest location to transit with the Pierce Transit hub right to the north of where we sit. In gray, you'll see what's called a transition overlay, and that is within 100 feet of an abutting single-family neighborhood throughout the boundary of the sub-area. There was a requirement to kind of step down height and density of structures. So the way it's been described throughout this process is kind of that wedding cake step down. There is throughout this downtown area that is on the outer edge all the way around. The other idea behind the downtown sub-area was to create a there. The city of Lakewood was incorporated without a pre-established downtown. Obviously, this was a city that came in after build out occurred organically over 100+ years. But the idea is we're trying to, through this sub-area planning process, create a recognizable downtown that would otherwise have happened perhaps if the city had started as a city as long as 100 years ago. There is the assumption and the intent that this will require capital investment over time by the city. So whether it's parks, whether it's transportation, whether it's something else, the idea is that the city is helping spur private development with its public investment. The downtown plan and the form-based code and the planned action, which again eliminates the need for individual developers to come in and get the SEPA analysis, was all crafted and adopted with the intention that it would spur interest in the downtown and help with us meeting our targets that were mentioned earlier. Mention again, going back to those numbers I just covered a few minutes ago regarding targets. Just another way to look at that statistic for housing as well as jobs is if the 24% or 2257 units, and if the number of jobs highlighted for downtown don't occur in this sub-area, the city needs to be planning and showing its work to state agencies and the Puget Sound Regional Council how those units would be absorbed in the rest of the city over time. So the intention with incentives is to try to make sure that what was hoped for and anticipated when the sub-area plan was adopted actually happens in the sub-area, meaning the other areas of the city are unaffected by at least these numbers of jobs or housing units. So regulatory incentives, in addition to the form-based code, which is fundamental to making it easier for a developer to come in, there is the multifamily tax exemption, and there was conversation this evening with the Planning Commission about that. There is the planned action SEPA, which we've talked about. The idea of master plan development, so allowing a developer to come in and say, this is what I can do to not meet word for word what your plan is, but by offering something else in addition to what's required, maybe allow some other variations on a theme, if you will, when they bring in a project into the sub-area. And then permissive uses, rather than other parts of the city that don't have the form-based code. If you were to go in and try and read, you're a property owner or you're somebody looking to rent some new business space and you're thinking maybe downtown Lakewood is attractive to you. Can I do what I want to do in the area? Instead of this type of use is allowed in this zone only, which is where a lot of zoning in many cities still remains. In the downtown and then in the Station District as well, it is along this type of a street. If your building structurally looks like X, all of these things are allowed except for a few that are explicitly prohibited. So it allows a lot more flexibility in terms of what can be built or placed in an existing building within the sub-area. Again, there's additional incentives related to density. So we talked about the overlays, but what you see here is up to 100 dwelling units per acre. If it's market rate mixed use, if it's residential only, it's up to 80. The affordable housing incentive. So if there is a project that has a certain percentage of affordable, meaning below market rate housing included, they can go up to 125 units per acre. And then there is no maximum density in the town center if a master plan is approved. Tree retention is a density bonus. There's no minimum lot size or maximum impervious surface coverage. There's also incentives related to allowing shared parking or public parking for private projects. So I guess I'll stop there actually and see if there's any questions just on that background regarding the downtown as of up to this point.
Any questions?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Quick question, no maximum impervious surface coverage. Are there not open space requirements or that, are there?
There are, and the residential requirements or mixed use requirements, anywhere there's a residential unit constructed, there's a certain number of square footage of private open space. So separate and apart from any public park, you have to allow, I believe it's 100 square feet per unit of private open space. So that would be in play with the impervious surface. If you're talking about though a commercial project, that's where you're gonna see you can use boundary line to boundary line without the impervious surface limitation.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any other question?
Okay, so jumping into this actual review that has occurred now, we did engage a consultant to help us with this. And tonight we also have with us online, Lisa Greeter with Burke Consulting. So if there is a question you have tonight that I am unable to answer, hopefully she'll be able to step in and help. But the targeted number of units we've talked about a couple times now is about 2,257. If you go back to 2018, when the plan was adopted through January of this year, 69 units were approved for residential. And a unit is anything from a single family detached to an apartment. It's any type of housing, right? So 69 units were moved through the permit process. Then we had Alliance Residential's application come in, which is a significantly larger project than what has happened to date. It's about, at this point, 426 units is what's being discussed tentatively. If you were to add those to what had already happened since 2018, you end up with 494 units, which is about 28% of the whole housing target through 2035. So that is a significant victory, if you will, for the amount of development that is happening in the downtown. In previous sub-area plan reviews, there was concern expressed by the council as well as by staff as to the pace at which growth was happening in the downtown. Some of that was affected by COVID, whether it's residential or commercial development. And then there's any other number of reasons in the market why developers were not deciding that Lakewood was the place to come. But what we are seeing is with the pickup post-COVID, there's additional interest. You can see there on the right-hand side there, right-hand side, the square there at the bottom. The economic development staff have talked to over 30 major regional and out-of-state mixed-use and multifamily developers, in addition to the Alliance Residential, kind of sniffing around and seeing what's possible in our downtown. In terms of jobs, not quite as rosy of progress to date. However, when people move into an area, they want to be able to work nearby ideally. So we're hoping that the interest for bringing jobs into the downtown is going to pick up when businesses see that there's that many more people that actually live in the downtown. The idea here, though, is that there's supposed to be, by 2035, about 7,369 net new jobs. So far, there has been about 2.5% of that goal met, 187 jobs. And then in terms of the growth of commercial space, million square feet, we're at a very low number there, about 1/10 of 1% of the goal. And yes, there's been economic activity in the downtown. Yes, there's been new businesses, but most of them have come into existing space. They haven't been building new commercial space. In terms of building valuation, the amount here does not include the Alliance Residential project. So pre that, you have about $15 million in valuation improvements in the time since that downtown sub-area plan was adopted. So any other questions on the downtown review?
Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can you throw a rough number at what that would look like with Alliance project? I mean, just order of magnitude to see.
Do you want to give it a go? Nope,
No, we can get you that, we can get you that information. Councilman.
Okay, I mean, it's a.
it will be
the-
significant.
The point is it's significant
Yes.
number and it really, could be the changing point to encouraging some development here in the downtown area. The jobs, follow people. If we have a bunch more people, the job numbers, presumably would look a lot better in due time. So it is very important. So thanks.
Yeah.
Councilmember Marcel.
Thank you. Sort of expanding on that, I'm not an economist, but as we talk tipping points and hitting critical mass and that sort of thing, is that how this stuff usually works? Once we get to a certain level, we're going to see more rapid growth once we get to that? Or is it going to be more linear and we're in trouble to hit those targets?
I will give you Tiffany Spears' personal opinion based on my experience in the building industry over time. I think we're at a point where, first of all, both the commercial and the residential market is recognizing as they move further south that Lakewood is a strategic spot to build and invest in because of the location it has along freight corridors, major transportation corridors, and some of the benefits to the city itself, what it looks like, what it feels like. So I think there's more interest now than there was in 2018 regardless. Secondly, it's a general rule of thumb. You have to have so many people in a space before certain types of commercial uses will even consider coming in. So by having, again, this idea of what could be 400 new people, or actually more than 400 people, 400 plus units, that's going to be a significant population increase in this part of the city, and businesses will take notice and will be bringing in their investment. It's the quality of life, also the improvements that are hopefully going to be happening with the public investment in the downtown that is going to increase interest by both commercial and residential developers as well. It's going to be the incentives, and I know MFTE has been talked about a couple of times, but that plus other incentives that are in the code already that make it an easier choice bottom line for a developer to come into Lakewood. Once they start to see some activity, oh, they did that, let's take a look a little closer and see why, and if this is something good for us.
The experience that we had in Kitsap was the first one we had come in the regional center. This came in with 300 apartments for multifamily adult. It triggered 3 or 4 more immediately right after that followed it. It took one national builder to recognize what could be done and the process and how to get there. The difference with Lakewood is that you have 10 more incentives than Kitsap has ever thought of having in terms of trying to draw people in. So I think it'll be the one that is seen and they'll, okay, because the master plan is really what will make it available for Alliance to be able to look at. That doesn't exist many places. So the ability to have flexibility and still design, it's really big.
Thanks. I just wanted to kind of follow up on the conversation. So we focused a lot on at our council retreat about incentives. And I think that what we've heard from city staff is that we have amazing incentives built in already. And it's really just about, hoping that people find them and figure out how to use them. And once one person uses it, now they have a playbook. Now there's a playbook and other folks can kind of follow suit. So I think it really is the, tipping of the iceberg, and there will be more to come. So, yeah.
Okay, so part of the conversation related to the downtown sub-area tonight is specifically on the transportation mitigation fee program. This was one of the incentives that was listed earlier this evening for you. But the idea here is it's tied very closely to this idea of the SEPA planned action, meaning you don't have to do your own transportation analysis because the city has done that already and adopted it in an ordinance. And so when you come in with your new development, be it residential, commercial, you can say, okay, this is the type of use. And then there's a calculation method where a number pops out and you're done. You don't have to do the additional individualized SEPA analysis that would otherwise be required. Just a point to make, the downtown TMF is what I'm going to use as the acronym. was never meant to be fully covering the costs of these transportation projects. As adopted, the council said 50% of these costs will be covered by the TMF, and the other 50% are supposed to come from public sources of funds, be it grants, be it vehicle license fees, be it grants from the federal, state, or regional level. So, or the general fund for that matter. So it's only half of this was ever anticipated to come from private development payment. How did we come up with the cost per trip? Without getting too far down into the weeds, I'll just try to breeze us through this, but there was a total number in that SEPA ordinance that was adopted of assumed trips. So if all of those jobs and all of those housing units were to get built by 2035, how many more trips would be happening into and out of the downtown every day? And that was estimated to be 6,658 trips. The number that you see there, that 28,945,000, was the assumed total cost in 2018 of the transportation projects that were required based on the planned growth. So whether it's an expansion of Gravelly Lake Drive's types of roadway, the turn lanes, or however many square feet of travel space you have on the street, or whether it is taking a private street and making it public, whether it's adding an intersection, all of those things added up to a total amount of 28,945,000. So saying if the private TMF is supposed to be half of that cost, what's half of 28,945,000? And then you divide that by the number of anticipated trips, which is the 6,658. That's where the 2,174 per trip calculation came from. So if you've seen in the past the spreadsheets that show how much a particular development was asked to pay in TMF, that is the fundamental calculation to come to the 2,154 or 74. And then there is a manual called the ITE manual, which is kind of the industry standard where they say, okay, given this type of a use, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, and if it's commercial, is it a drive-through or is it something that doesn't require a lot of traffic every day? They have an estimated number of trips that come and go from that type of use. You use that, multiply it against the 2,174 per trip, and then you figure out what that TMF would be for a particular application. So really the two big numbers is that we have to get out of every application, the way this program is currently run, is the type of use, the specific use from the relevant type in that ITE manual. And then in turn, because of that, how many trip ends in the quote PM peak hour. So between 4 and 6 PM, when traffic is the highest level, is how this is calculated to come up with the number. So on the right bottom side, you'll see a single family detached analysis. It shows you the type, how it would show up in the ITE manual. Long story short, you get to a bottom number there on the bottom right of the number of trips per day are anticipated from a single family detached house. That was adopted by the city council in 2018. Since then, I want to say it was mid-2019, but I could have the date wrong. There was an administrative policy that was adopted after the original TMF was put in place that added a little bit of nuance to the calculations, which have resulted over time in a significant change in what the anticipated collection from private projects has been. First of all, the process is pretty straightforward. An applicant comes in and says, I know I want to do this type of a use. The calculation is made regarding what they would need to pay. But then there is a new caveat, and you'll see this on the bottom two bullets here. Under the administrative policy, the only thing that applicants are charged is for net new trips. Meaning, if they're moving into an existing space, which most, if not all of the projects since 18 have been, you take the math of what was their last, how many trips per day came out of that, and then look at the new use. And if there's either the same or fewer trips with the new use, they don't pay any TMF at all. If they do have a higher number of trips, then that is the difference is all that they pay on. So to tie this down a little bit better, I'll just throw in I'll go with, I'm gonna say it wrong, but perhaps, but Daiso, the store that recently went in, there was a business in there already. And so when they had the application come in for their TMF, it was not how many people coming in and out of your parking spaces a day do you pay on? It's how many that may be different and above, well, the last store or fitness center or whatever it was is there. Vary that against Barbecue Pete's, where that had been historically an empty space. Nothing had been in there before, and so it was a brand new calculation. And they were having to pay all of the trips because no one had ever occupied that space before. So the math was different because of this administrative policy. The other thing with the policy as it sits is that there is no time limit on how far back you go for the last use. Meaning if there had been 25 years ago, let's just pull that number out of the air, in the Barbecue Pete area, that number of trips would have been credited against what they would have paid. Most places will have 12 months, 24 months, some other limit of time, how far back you can go on the credits. And so if a space has been vacant beyond a certain amount of time, it's like you're a new use coming in and the calculation shows that. So with these two things that were added in the administrative policy, we ended up with, as I said, less collected through the TMF than was originally anticipated by the council when they adopted the sub-area plan. The other point here is that TMFs do have to be returned after 10 years. And we are at the 6-year mark for the downtown. So part of what's going on in staff's mind and coming to you with this discussion is to say there's about 4 years before there will start to be this need to potentially pay some of the fees back going forward.
Councilmember Person, okay.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So would you say that by not having a, you know, a 2-year limit or a 5-year limit on something, it could essentially sit vacant at really like no risk to the owner because they're not going to be losing out on any fees? And so it's a way of not really holding, you know, someone's foot to the fire to get something redeveloped.
That's one way to look at it, I guess, because what happens here is that 10-year thing, which is third from the bottom, it's the current owner of the property who gets the feedback. So in the case of the downtown sub-area, you've got some large property owners where if they have empty spaces within their strip mall or whatever it happens to be, after 10 years, they get the money back regardless of if another applicant, when they moved into a space at one point, had paid it. So that is a dynamic that is in the analysis of TMFs from the property owner's side.
I have a question. When you mentioned 25 years, I know you didn't mean 25 years ago, but so if, as a building been sitting there that long and I move into that building, I'm gonna pay based on what the traffic was like or the parking was like at that time?
What the program is currently set up to do is if 25 years ago there was a bakery in a space and then they left, 25 years goes by, it's been empty that whole time, a new business comes in. Rather than saying this has been vacant more than 12 months, so you're just going to start over, it's even 25 years ago, the city's going to look at what the bakery's number of trips per day were and credit that against what your new use is. So if you're bringing in, I don't know, let's call it an ice cream shop, and there happens to be more traffic for the ice cream shop than there was for the bakery, you would pay the difference, the number of trips. But if you were less, then it would be, you wouldn't have to pay anything at all.
Great, thank you.
One thing that other jurisdictions have looked at is they'll look at the original that was paid. So maybe they paid 25 years ago and they paid $1,500. They'll run the trips of what it is today. And the only thing that you don't pay the difference on is whatever was paid previously. So if there was $3,200 paid before, but now you've got $16,000 in what would be new just because of the new rate, because there's inflation as we move along, then that's what you pay. You get credit for whatever was paid previously. So there are options when you look at TMF as to what you want to do. But the one thing probably with the TMF is not to make it complicated for people coming in to understand. And I'm from the outside, just starting. I can tell you, I looked at it and I was like, how does this work? I was like, Okay, so how do we get someone commercial to come in and understand exactly what we're doing?
Right.
A cleaner line would make it much better.
Okay, Councilmember Larcella and then Councilmember Boki. Councilmember Boki.
So and I know we've debated a time or two, and you mentioned here in the recommendations that I think you're gonna probably talk to towards the end of this presentation. That we need to take a look at it and at the fee, but I'm thinking. And hesitate a little bit to talk about the project, but let's talk about this project. 400 units going in. It spills out onto it. I don't even know if this is a private street or a public street out here. The minute they open the apartments, this intersection right here, 20 feet, 50 feet outside the door will be a mess, right? To try to make right turns or left turns out of this parking lot here at City Hall will just be a mess. Then the other side, that's not a real road. It's a private road, I think, over on the other side of the mall here. So you don't have to be a traffic engineer to realize plunking down 400 apartments on that parking lot, good. Great for housing. It's just gonna be a mess the day we open it unless we do some things. So right now they're on track to pay the fee, correct?
So they'll be on track to paying the difference. So really it goes off their traffic impact analysis they'll do. So they'll look at the existing use, which is Barnes and Noble. And their initial statement has been that there will be less traffic, to which we've challenged that. It's going back and we're like, no. Public Works will look at that. But with the way that everything is written out right now, if that came in and the traffic analysis showed that it created less trips, they would not pay a TMF. Because that's how it's written. It
And
would
then
be a
they don't have
lower
to do
use.
SEPA either so we've caught ourselves in a catch-22.
Yeah, so SEPA is actually beneficial, which is what's drawing them in. There's not really, because it'd be
So we
under what
need
they
to
designed.
if we get rid of the thing, we have to pull the idea of not making them they have to do a SEPA then.
No, so the way to look at it would be to look at what you do with the TMF and how you regulate it. And how you go ahead and still collect the monies. I know we didn't speak about it, but one of them is to look at what was collected previously and then collect the difference. So it's still giving credit. It's still encouraging people to come in because there's some allowance for what they had. But now you're collecting the difference in what those would be based on current rate at the time of submittal versus what they paid in 1997 when they built it. Because obviously things cost more.
But they're already vested.
They're vested as to what they're looking at, but I don't know. I'd have to read it. Tiffany could probably speak better to when the TMF actually comes into play and when you lock in.
And it depends as well if they're gonna do the master development, because if you do that, the rules change. And what they would be paying is gonna be calculated in terms of what types of extra benefit they would be giving back to the city. So as time goes by with that particular project, some of the what do you call it? Some of the boundaries may change, for lack of a better way to describe it. Generally speaking, if you have right now under this system, a project come in that could have significant new traffic because something has been empty for a while. Let's point our fingers at Bed Bath & Beyond now, or the Gotcha space or something else. If you were to have a new use come in there, regardless of how long it's been empty, those new trips will physically be there. It's just whether they will pay, quote, their fair share under the system because of the way the administrative policy has affected the original TMF program.
So the way we've written the TMF actually actually gives incentive to residential builders who pick up the tax exemption, then they turn around and it incentivizes actually knocking down the most successful businesses, commercial businesses. The best way for a residential person would do would be to build on the target property. Because they could basically build for nothing, new traffic, and build in the middle of a parking lot and just cars start going everywhere.
What I would counter that a little bit with is to say it's not the TMF as adopted, it's the administrative policy that has complicated it. Because when the original program was put in place, it was public funds 50%, private side 50%, period. And so we would be talking a slightly different conversation this evening if the administrative policy that puts no limit on time and gives us credit because all of the projects would have been doing additional payments up to this point. And then there's also the public side that we haven't really touched on yet, where the city hasn't been identifying its 50% share for the projects that are identified as mitigation for this development. So the recommendations will include some of this information, but I would suggest that it's more looking at the administrative policy to see if it needs to change or even go away. And or if you don't want to do the TMF anymore, how else will you pay for the identified mitigation transportation projects for the downtown development, whether it is through 100% coming from the public side, or whether it's changing that 50-50 split to some other percentage split between private and public. But that's all part of council conversation, because this has been in place now for 6 years, and the results that I'm about to put up on screen will show that pretty clearly. I see that Lisa is online and maybe has something to add.
Lisa?
Thank you. Council members and staff, I wanted to add that one other way to think about a baseline from which you could count whether or not fees would be paid would be the base year of the SEPA work. So not necessarily going back to the 90s or whenever the site was occupied, but the base year of the analysis was about 2017, 2018, because the 6,600 new trips were based off of that point in time. So that might be something else to consider with the administrative aspects of this.
Thank you. Councilmember Larcella?
Thank you. Two quick comment/questions. First, I appreciate what you said about trying to keep it as simple as possible, especially for small businesses coming in here. It's going to be better to keep things simple so that folks can understand it and see where the incentives are. The large developers already know how to navigate this sort of stuff, right? So I appreciate that. And then the other thing, and I think Mrs. Spear, you started to touch on it, was so we've got this amount that we have 4 years left to start working. When we go to do that, we have to identify a matching amount from the city from one of our funds to do that too, right?
As currently adopted, it is 50% of the share of a particular project, be it adding an intersection to expanding Gravelly Lake Drive or making one of the private streets within the downtown mall center public. Half of that is supposed to be paid by private funds and half by public. That again is something that could be changed, as well as that administrative policy we've been talking about. Yeah. Okay. I don't think we need to cover this if you wouldn't mind, Brianna, moving one more. Thank you. So here is the bottom line. Since 2018, most of the sub-area projects have not been assessed a TMF, and no public funds have been set aside for the public share. So with the administrative policy, in theory, with that 28 million total, 945,000 for the total of the all the projects identified in 2018, you would be needing 14 million and change from the private side to be that 50% that would over time build those projects, and the same amount from the public side. What you have based on the projects that have been built to date since 2018 is, under the administrative policy, about 175,000 has been collected. Just on the private side, if you did not have your administrative policy in place as it reads, you would have collected by now almost 833,000. So again, this is showing how most projects, because of that policy, have not paid what they would have otherwise paid under the adopted TMF program. So at this point, we're about 10% into the total costs from 2018 for all of those projects that were identified. And again, you've got the 10-year reminder there. So this is just trying to illustrate that something we would recommend, something needs to change in order to either make this TMF policy program more successful, or to just change it out altogether in order to start collecting more funds toward the needed transportation improvements. You go ahead, Brianna. Thank you. So there are alternatives, and they are a number. I think there's 4 or 5 included in the packet, and then here on the next few slides. First of all, adding that time limit in. So rather than however long ago a business or something was in a space, we're going to go back that far, create some sort of time frame, and it doesn't need to be 12 months, but that's one option. The other way would be exempting certain uses from a collection, but not others. So this would require a little more legal analysis by city staff, but the idea here is if there is a preferred use that the city council really wants to encourage in the downtown, maybe they reduce or even exempt that type of use from the mitigation fee, and then others would have to make up the difference, or the public side would. Another option is, again, change that 50-50 split to something else. So how much does the private side versus the public side pay? By reducing the amount that the percentage split there, you reduce the amount ultimately that each private development is needing to pay. Next slide. Another option, you could take this TMF program away completely and rely on other sources of funds for your transportation improvements in the downtown. It could be a citywide traffic impact fee, which is not as this one has been described. This would be the traditional impact fee, which would be at this point a citywide process. All uses anywhere in the city would pay some amount toward the projects that would need to be constructed in the downtown, because by looking at traffic patterns, there's a way to figure out the effect of each part of the city on the downtown in terms of traffic. There's those grants, and they are out there, but right now grants really are not focused on the type of projects that are being discussed for the downtown. They are not safety. They are not, quote, complete streets necessarily. So yes, we would be applying for grants, but just the criteria and the focus of many of those regional and federal grants in particular would not be the type that would be sought for downtown. And then again, just looking to general fund or some other public source as the source of funding for the TMF replacement. The other thing you could do is restrict development. So there are levels of service for transportation system in the city, and there's different levels. If you think of your elementary school grades A through F, LOS is kind of determined the same way. So certain streets in the city have been identified as they can get so congested, and that's okay. The policy decision was made. I'm just gonna, again, this is not accurate, but Bridgeport Way maybe can get at level of service D, which means you wait so long at an intersection, or it takes so long to go this distance down the road. Those could be looked at as your go, no go, meaning if the downtown development that's being suggested would tip some part of the city's structure over a level of service, you would say no to that development until that transportation project is constructed. Obviously, what that does is slow development, which is kind of the opposite of what the downtown sub-area plan is all about, but that is an option. The other one would be to adjust the levels of service. So maybe you say, you know what, we need this development, and if the transportation system gets more congested, so be it. We're going to change our levels of service. Next slide. One thing that's also affecting all of this conversation is we are in the midst of our waiting period on the RAISE grant. I think it's been presented to the council in the not too distant past. This is the second year that Lakewood has applied for the RAISE grant, and the idea this year is really focused on getting enough funding to actually update all of the planned motorized and non-motorized improvements in the downtown to make sure those 2018 projects, the numbers that are related to them, the cost of what they would be is updated and accurate. So we're hoping to hear back in late June at the latest for that. So here are your recommendations for downtown, the sub-area biennial review. There is one technical change in that first bullet point where you have inconsistent code between what's in the downtown 18B, which is that development code, and what's in the rest of the city's code in 18A. So just reconciling those. The second is to take a look at and anticipate that next year, Puget Sound Regional Council is going to be looking at centers. And I haven't spent any time on this evening, but the downtown is considered a center by the Puget Sound Regional Council. And they will be looking to see whether it is, as a downtown, growing at the pace planned for and qualifying it for the funding that PSRC provides as a center next year and into 26. Then it is also recommended that the council take a look at the TMF program and see that you do have funds there and maybe use those toward the construction of an intersection at Gravely Lake Drive and Avondale. The 175 and change is obviously not the total amount of this project, but that is one where you could dedicate those funds before they would have to be returned. And then the final recommendation is that the council chew on whether the TMF program should be left alone or whether there should be changes made to it. We're not asking for those decisions to be made this evening. This is something that will be part of the big 24 package coming to you. But the idea is just to have you thinking about this ahead of time. So when your public hearing and your discussions happen, you've had a little chance to reflect. So any questions on that?
Councilmember Arcelo.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. When we talk the TMF, are we comparing notes and baselining off other municipalities and what they do for their urban areas?
I would ask Lisa if she's still there to kind of help with how the TMF was originally determined and what comparison was made with other jurisdictions.
Yes, thank you. A number of communities have the citywide impact fees that Tiffany mentioned, but some have started to do area-specific mitigation fees. One that comes to mind, and that was under review when we were working on this for Lakewood, was City of Bremerton, the sub-area where Harrison Hospital was located and has since moved, was one of those areas that the city started with on traffic mitigation fees. Other cities will apply specific fees for a particular sub-area on top of any other standing fees where they feel that there's additional need.
And in those cases, were they typically split 50-50 like we put in our policy?
Yes, oftentimes the local government will make a policy choice around what it wants to do with the development, attraction, and yet shared responsibility. So there is a similar conversation that happens.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question I had was, so our administrative policies have driven that what could have been 800 and something thousand down to 170. Has that served as an incentive for people to come into the downtown area and build because they see that that policy benefits them?
I cannot give you hard and fast fact. What I can tell you anecdotally is that staff is not aware that the TMF has ever made it a business decide not to come in. I think what you have seen with the pace of development and redevelopment in the downtown has more to do with market overall, COVID, other factors. This wasn't a do or die.
Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. So I think what Mr. Boki was alluding to was this original study for the SEPA and the traffic impact analysis was based on, the downtown sub area, a certain amount of traffic for the town center, and in the presentation, it looks like it's based on your average daily traffic and not like your peak hour traffic. So there's a, you know, the Barnes and Noble, people are coming and going kind of all day. So you don't have the peak hour traffic in the morning and the evening, people rushing to get out to the highway, out to the, you know, public transportation and coming back in the evening and really, you know, bottlenecking that. You have a constant flow of traffic. So is there anything in the TMF now that would allow us to look at something different for a large development that is creating those level of service, you know, issues? Or would that be something that we would need to revise in a new policy?
I'd ask Lisa if she could start an answer for that.
Sure, the ordinance, the traffic mitigation fee is based on PM peak hour trips. So the analysis that Tiffany alluded to, where they want to compare what was coming at Barnes and Nobles, they'd have to be looking at it in terms of what happens in peak hour versus their own peak hour trips for their development.
So they're saying that the Barnes and Noble has the same peak hour, PM peak hour trips as a 400 unit apartment complex?
The question is being asked.
Okay.
What you look at for average daily trips across the whole is what you look at really for coming in and out for the day. But when it comes to looking at the TMF, it is based on peak PM when you look at the fee that you would pay.
Okay.
But we do look holistically at what comes in for a day. Same with like a single family residence. Single family residence across the state is going to be 10 average daily trips. 5 in, 5 out.
So I think to try to, tell me if I'm off track with my response to you. The way the TMF is laid out is based in SEPA philosophy. You pay this fee because we've done the analysis for you, and the analysis is based on the average PM peak hour trip out of the ITE. A private applicant, if they want to, can say, we're going to do our own traffic analysis because we disagree with that amount. And for instance, Dutch Bros, I believe, did that a few years ago. So there is an opportunity already for a developer or an applicant to challenge what would be the analysis otherwise. But in terms of the way it is set up, it is limited to the PM peak hour. It's not the full day's trip or the intensity of travel in and out throughout the day for different types of uses. And so if you want to compare, in this case, it's kind of an extreme thing. You've got this business that's very popular and is a commercial use, compared to this is a apartment building that's going to be coming in with residential traffic patterns. How do you take those two and compare what are apples and oranges? If you want to try to come up with the impact fee, that analysis is slightly different than the TMF is, but they are based on a fundamental different mindset in how to analyze the traffic.
Thanks.
Sure.
Any other comments on that topic? Otherwise, I was gonna have another second. Okay, so item number 3, recommending, you know, improvements out on Gravelly Lake and Ardmore. If we're getting 400 units here, and, you know, I would assume that most traffic is going out to I-5. Personally, I would be looking out that way to do some improvements, not, you know, the other way. So that's just my comment on that.
Any other comments, questions?
All right, if not, I'm going to take us through the other biennial review, which will be much speedier, I promise. So the Lakewood Station District is one that had a sub-area plan adopted in 2021. Similar to downtown, there is the development code, which is form-based again, so what the building looks like more than what's allowed in it. And then again, there was a SEPA-based planned action, meaning they private applicant does not have to do their own SEPA analysis if they fall within the parameters of that planned action that's adopted. The idea there is it is centered around the Sounder Station, and it is intended to be a pedestrian-oriented, high-density employment and residential district. It's intended to be a multimodal commuter hub because you not only have the Sounder Station itself, but there's also bus in the near vicinity of the Sounder Station as well. And the idea is also to try to get a mix of land uses, residential as well as neighborhood businesses and those things that are also taking advantage of the nearby transportation corridors. So this is a quick overview of the map of current uses and future land uses within this sub-area. It's about 340 acres in size. It's a little different than the downtown in that you have almost 40% of the whole landmass are on 13 of the largest parcels. So it's not cookie cutter residential lots throughout. It's not one big use in one spot and then smaller uses throughout. You have quite a bit of acreage on a relatively low number of parcels. What does this mean over time? If they become available and the land itself test. Okay, thanks. You get that too. So you have the opportunity here perhaps over time to have redevelopment happen relatively easier than other places because you already have a big enough space on one of those parcels or one or two, rather than having to compile and consolidate 15, 20 parcels in order to have enough space to do a major redevelopment. So the idea over time is that redevelopment is an option here because of the transportation assets in particular, but you also have St. Clair Hospital as another public institutional use right in the sub-area. Going back to that idea of how much growth needs to happen here versus elsewhere in the city, it's planned for about 19% of the housing and 13% of the jobs happen within this sub-area. If they don't, they will need to be planned for elsewhere in the city. And again, the idea behind the sub-areas, both downtown and Station District, is to have focused growth so less of the rest of the city's built-out areas are affected over time. Incentives in the Station District, again, that form-based code, tree retention, density bonuses. There's no minimum lot size. The design standards are clearly laid out and it's that form-based code. And then again, that idea of rather than saying you can only do this on this parcel because of its zone, it is you can do anything and everything other than these explicitly prohibited within this type of a building and along this type of a street. So progress to date, again, with some of the new housing that's coming in the recent past for application, we're at about 19% of the full housing target for 2035 in the Station District, which is a great start given it only was adopted a few years ago. In terms of jobs, we're also looking good based on what's happening with the Neighborhood Fulfillment Center. It's anticipated to have about 330 jobs there. Assuming that all comes to pass, we're at about 35% of the 2035 target. The big change that happened since 21 is the loss of this idea of Lakewood Landing. And for the newer council members, that was something that was incorporated into the sub-area plan as a 30-acre multi-phase development where there would be quite a few retail jobs as well as quite a bit of residential development. Unfortunately, what happened ultimately is that the center section of what would have been Lakewood Landing is where this neighborhood fulfillment center is going. So Lakewood Landing, as it was originally envisioned, is not happening. We're going to remove it from the sub-area plan as a result, reference to Lakewood Landing, but the total targets of jobs and housing will remain the same. So here, Councilmember Pearson, to go back to your question from early on, in the Station District, this includes the residential planned, and we're up at 113 million, almost 114 million in valuation versus the 15 million in the downtown without Alliance Residential. So you see it's a significant change. When you can incorporate that in the downtown, I don't want to try to guess, but it will be significantly more than 15 million. So the recommendations for Station District, again, removing Lakewood Landing, and then the other one is process. When we did our 22 update to the council about downtown, we said, and the council ultimately agreed, that it made sense to change from an every 2-year review of these plans to tie it in, coordinate it with the big 5-year and 10-year comprehensive plan processes. So we are recommending the same would happen for this sub-area plan as well. Any questions on the Station District sub-area?
Any questions? Councilmember Boki?
Quick one. the fulfillment center is the vast majority of the jobs, so 330.
It is what's anticipated there, but what you have for the plan is 1,276. So that gets you to about 35% of the total.
Okay, so is there more commercial interest in the station district plan than the downtown plan? And is that something that we should be talking about and maybe change the plan a little bit?
Well, Councilmember Roki, that is an option. I would say that since 21, you do have more commercial activity in the station district rather than downtown. And if you are looking at, can we meet our targets? Can we check a box on a piece of paper? Taking some of that 74% of the jobs into the downtown and maybe moving some of them over into station district might make sense. It's something to think about. You don't need to do it. The way things are planned as of now through 2044, this all still pencils. But it is something where if you recognize a need to perhaps be a little more equal in your share between where jobs go between the two sub areas, that's something the council could do.
Okay, and we don't have to do it right away. I mean,
Correct.
we could just wait and see if
Yeah.
you know, maybe things are taking off along Pack Highway and we'll see some more jobs coming in there. I mean, I guess we don't dictate exactly where the jobs are going to go. I know the fulfillment center is turning out to be a pretty good jobs producer, but it'll be interesting to see if there's more redevelopment on there because it is relatively inexpensive, I think, compared to a lot of other areas.
Yeah, and as well as what we were talking about with the Alliance Residential Project, what's happening in the Station District is about 324 dwelling units are mentioned here. That's part of a multi-phased up to 600 unit development that's now going in. So we don't have Lakewood Landing happening in its housing units, but across the way, we do have what's happening. Some people will call it the Borman property, some people will call it the Devco project, but it is multiple hundreds of housing units that are going to be coming in. And so you couple those housing units with the fulfillment center's jobs, I would anticipate that's going to get some momentum going in that sub area.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. And if there's no other questions, I will step away. Thank you very much for your attention.
Any other questions? Thank you so much. Yes, great job. Okay. Next on our agenda, you can see the item scheduled for our regular meeting, May 20th. So without any other questions, I will call on our city manager, Mr. Caulfield, for our city manager report.
Evening, Deputy Mayor, council members. A few updates for you. I know Deputy Mayor Moss will probably touch upon this, but on Friday morning, the Deputy Mayor, myself, and our housing manager, Jeff Gum, represented the city of Lakewood as part of an update that was provided by LASA as it relates to their 25-unit affordable housing project. And this was to recognize and thank Congresswoman Strickland for providing the final piece of funding of $1 million to have that project come to fruition. And so the LASA Executive Director, Jason Scales, did a nice job of giving her a briefing and giving her a walkthrough of the site as well, so she could see firsthand about how that project is going to come together. So also want to point out that it was actually the city's leadership, the city council's leadership, and actually helping LASA apply for those funds and making it a federal priority, as well at the state level as well. But again, we do want to thank Congresswoman Strickland for her leadership in pushing that through and being able to secure that final component of much needed funding for this project. Earlier, when the Planning Commission was here, the Urban Forestry Program was mentioned. Want to let you know that at your June 3rd meeting, we will be coming forward with a contract for your consideration. It totals $150,000. of monies that are actually appropriated for the urban forestry program to do step one, which is a tree inventory. We need to do an updated tree inventory, and so that would be conducted over the summer and into the fall. And then that would kick off the next steps of developing the urban forestry program into the early part of 2025 and into 26. Also want to point out that this council has actually appropriated, and we expect to get some grants through Washington State Department of Commerce, but we've actually set aside about almost $750,000 for this initiative. So it is a program that is funded. And again, it was policy direction that the council did provide as part of the 23-24 adopted budget, which we're currently in the process of. Something that's new that I wanted to bring to your attention that I'm also going to be coming back with a request for some additional funding. Again, it actually has to do with the comp plan update. As a part of the comprehensive plan update, we're required to update our critical area ordinance, or our CAO. And that's actually based on recent updates at the state legislative level as well through Department of Fish and Wildlife. One of the things that we have noted while going through this process is that the upcoming updates will then conflict with our existing Shoreline Master Program, the SMP, which was last updated in 2019. Now, the SMP under state law is not required to be updated for another, for 10 years, which would be 2029 from 2019. However, we can't have conflicts. And so my recommendation is that we also update the SMP to make sure that they align with the critical areas ordinance. One way of looking at it is the SMP is kind of the policy document, and the critical areas ordinance is kind of like the implementation document, if you will. The other item that we will be recommending is that the SMP not be a separate document, kind of just out there, but actually incorporating that into our municipal code so that when the development community comes in, they see it all as one-stop shopping. So then they don't have to go searching. And likewise, at the staff level, we all see it in one place as well. But again, we want to avoid unintended consequences by updating our CAO and not updating the SMP. And my recommendation will be to fund that with some existing ARPA funds that we have. I will have a cost estimate by the end of this week, and I'll be able to share that with you here in the near future. But again, wanted to just give you a heads up on that, a warning order, if you will. You might have seen American Lake Park, huge project, is out to bid. And so we hope to get the bids in here in the next month or two. Now the construction of that project is not going to begin until after the summer season, and then we'll continue and hopefully be completed, around May or June of next year. Also, I know, the city of Lakewood, along with a number of cities, are involved in the whole opioid lawsuit and settlement. And the city attorney notified me this morning that the Johnson & Johnson settlement has been completed through the Washington State AG's office. And so the Johnson & Johnson will be providing their settlement dollars to all the respective cities and towns, as well as the state, including the city of Lakewood. And it looks like that our settlement on that particular pharmaceutical agency is going to be about $293,000. And we expect to get it here in the next couple of months or so, if not sooner. So that will add on to the financial resources that we have accumulating in that account. And of course, you have directed your Community Services Advisory Board to provide some recommendations on how to make those dollars available for the Lakewood community. The Pierce County Library System, their Board of Trustees, they held a second study session this past Saturday. I don't know if it was in the morning or the afternoon, and it was a follow-up to their first one, which was a couple of weeks ago, which talked about the future of a downtown library. And it looks like they're leaning toward rebuilding on their existing site. This study session this past Saturday focused on the Tillicum site. They did not come to any definitive direction. However, they did ask the executive director and her team to go back and do some additional follow-up and some research and report back to the Board of Trustees. Specifically what that is, I don't have that. But again, the Board of Trustees is moving forward on both fronts to bring new libraries to Lakewood. So just again, wanted to give you a heads up on that. And then our capital projects manager,
So actually, he didn't take credit for this, but he actually had some good news. So the big bridge, the traffic bridge, that was actually supposed to be here like November or December. And so he reminded me earlier today that last week, either last week or the week before, they got notification that it's going to be coming in about the August timeframe or so. So just to give you a heads up, and there's a long lead time on a lot of that material, especially those specialized types of material, which they just take a long time. They're just not sitting on a rack somewhere, so to speak. As far as your calendar goes, I know there's several of you who will be attending the Communities and Schools annual breakfast event on Wednesday. So thank you for that. It's from 9 a.m. to 10:30. I know it's kind of they moved it from 7 to 8:30. So I think a couple of us are going to make some comments that maybe go back to the 7 to 8:30 a.m. But I just wanted to pass that on. So breakfast at 9 a.m. That's like a Saturday or a Sunday. On a Monday through Friday, breakfast is at 6 or 7. So just saying, yes, it is, Councilmember, it's at the McGavick Center. But that's a great event. They do great work here in town, and just want to recognize them for that. May 18th is Saturday, the youth fishing event over at American Lake Park. Also Armed Forces Day on JBLM, though I think you have to give up some DNA in your firstborn maybe to get on base. They have tightened down security, just to let you know. So I'm not saying that with a, kind of wisecracking a little bit, but security is really, they're on heightened alert there with folks trying to get on base. A week from Tuesday, on May 22nd at 6 p.m., the mayor will host his coffee house. It'll be on the very exciting topic of comprehensive plan, unless he wishes to change it between now and then. But Ms. Spear will be out there talking about all that is comprehensive plan. And then the next day, next Wednesday, on the 22nd, again, Clover Park High School is holding their annual Arlington Project, which is just a very tremendous event to honor our fallen service members. And then on May 25th, the Youth Summit from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And I think as we talked about last week, they are looking for council members to be there to kind of kick it off actually at 11, between 11 and 12, and they want to do kind of some roundtable discussions with you. So if you can please let me know if you plan on attending. I think most of you have let me know that you'll be able to attend there. So I think that'll be good. So, and then May 27th, which is Memorial Day. So Pierce County Veterans Advisory Council, in conjunction with Mountain View Funeral Home, is having an event at 2 p.m. To recognize those who have fallen over at their honor section. If any of you are interested in attending, I think the mayor might be attending to say some words, or maybe Deputy Mayor Moss.
I haven't, I did get an invitation, but I was going to ask if the mayor was speaking.
Okay, I haven't heard one way or the other. I'll check with him. And then on May 30th, I know Councilmember Pearson is looking for a buddy to go up to Seattle to attend the PSRC Annual General Assembly meeting at the Convention Center, and that's from 9:30 a.m. to 1. So actually, the traffic going up shouldn't be too bad. And then if you got to get out of there a little early though, and because you got to get to Federal Way before 1 p.m. because then it backs up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So, and then we'll keep an eye on, make sure President Biden's not coming back into town. So, all right. And then looking out a little bit into on June 1st, which is a Saturday, we're going to have our first street festival over at the Colonial Plaza. So I'll end it there. But with that, Deputy Mayor, unless there's any questions.
Are there any questions, Councilmember Marcelo?
Thank you. Last year for Memorial Day, there was an invitation to JBLM for a ceremony there. Is that happening this year?
We have not seen one, Councilmember.
Thank you.
If we do, we'll let you know.
That was a powerful event.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions? Councilmember Pearson?
The Armed Forces Day, is it too late to try to get an RS, like, you know, access or whatever to?
I don't think so, Councilmember. I think maybe just go online to JBLM, that there should be some information there. If there's
Okay.
not, let us know and we'll try and find out where that is. But I know they're asking for people to try and get their passes, if you will, so that you can get on base. It's more of a closed event than last year's air show, just to let you know.
One of the comments that I had is, I'm happy to hear that the bridge is coming before December. That four-way stop at Ardmore is really not safe. Yeah, but it's sitting back. Yeah, it's back too high, so that's good news. Good news.
Actually, I have, that's correct, glad it's August. Actually, I have one more update. So you might have seen that in the newspaper in the last day or so, that Pierce County has $2.5 million set aside for kind of an emergency shelter somewhere in Pierce County, but not Tacoma. And I know somebody suggested here in Lakewood over at the Tillicum Community Center. And long story short, I just want to say that we have said no for a number of reasons. Number one, we don't think that's a good location. The city has spent considerable amount of resources, you know, addressing that community. So kind of, we just don't think that would be that's a good use of that site. But more importantly, or as equally as important, you know, the city of Lakewood has more than its fair share when you talk about, you know, the safety net, and I would put Tacoma in there as well. But, you know, we have Western State Hospital, we have 150 adult family homes, we have group homes, which we only know we're a handful of. We have the only ESF in all of Pierce County, if not the Puget Sound region. We are providing $1 million in support of the Pierce County Village. And we have the Maureen Howard Emergency Shelter with 83 beds that is opening up as well. So I would just say that we have done our fair share and then some as compared to every other city in town. And so if the county is looking for a place to invest those dollars, certainly the county is a good option. But likewise, there are a number of other cities that could step up to the plate to provide that. So, and I know I've heard that, and I know what I'm telling you is I'm preaching to the choir here, but I just wanted to just let you all know that.
Yeah. I did notice that they're growing around our building here when it gets in the evening.
Yeah, we have seen in just the last few days kind of an increase. And so we've been talking to LPD on that. Part of it is some folks have been coming by and providing, you know, food and stuff. That's great, but this is a commercial business. This is not a homeless shelter.
Right.
So, but more than willing to help find people help and whatever resources they need. And so we'll continue to do that.
Yeah. Councilmember Pearson.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Pierce County Village project, is the hearings and stuff done? Do we know any information at this time about what's the status is, if it was a favorable outcome during a hearing or?
Councilmember, I don't have at my fingertips what the time, I think, well, I know the hearing, I don't know if the hearing has been closed yet, but once we get a ruling on it, I'll be able to share that with you. What we were told is that the hearing examiner is expected to make a decision sometime to the middle to latter part of June.
Oh.
Though, given all the testimony that has been provided, that might be, I don't know, it might take longer. Yeah, it might take longer for the hearing examiner to do his due diligence on really putting together a solid report, as well as whatever his decision is. And again, that's just based on the testimony and what's happened so far, coupled with the questions that he's been asking. So we'll see. But certainly once we know, we'll be able to share that with you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. And actually, you might see it before we do, because it'll probably hit the press before we even get it.
Any other questions for the city manager? Thank you so much.
Oh, and I just want to apologize for the PowerPoint presentations not being in the packet. So we should have had those in there for you.
Thank you. Okay. Then we move on to council comments and we'll start with Councilmember Boki. Councilmember Boki has nothing. Councilmember Pearson.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I'll be at the breakfast on Wednesday. So looking forward to that.
Good. Councilmember Larcella.
Yeah, I was out for a week and we had a week off after that. And so now I got like tons of pages of stuff to go through and it's pushing 10 o'clock, but I'll be quick. So first, thanks to the people who presented tonight. I enjoyed the transportation reviews, the sub-area plans, and meeting the new planning commission members. I hadn't met them yet, so it was good to talk with them. 2 weeks ago, we had the Pierce County Opioid Abatement Council meeting and just reviewed what other jurisdictions are doing with the funds. Most of them are waiting for more funds to come in so they can make more powerful moves. Much like us, we're asking our Community Services Advisory Board to work with our youth council to come up with recommendations, likely in the 25-26 biennium. Some jurisdictions are pooling their funds at the county level to work with the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department and be able to make an impact that way. Looking ahead to this week, I will be at the fishing event on Saturday. Last year I went, it was a lot of fun teaching kids how to fish. But it's, oh yeah, I'm stealing all the fish from the kids. Yeah, no, it was really good. A lot of kids, I helped catch their first fish of their lifetimes last year, and just see the joy on their faces. It's $10 a kid. They get to take the fish home with them and a new fishing rod for themselves. So it's really, really neat. Wednesday will be the South Sound 911 meeting. I will be there. And I appreciate all of you who were here last week for the proclamation party, because that was quite the event to watch online. Thank you.
Thank you very much for missing out on that one. Councilmember Bell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I don't have anything exciting to report, but I really did appreciate the presentations today. I really will put some thoughtfulness into those mitigation fees and look into that a little bit more. It seems like there's a lot more conversation to be happening with that. So did I use the right word? Yeah, I'm getting my fees confused. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do agree that the presentations are very helpful. And I think if more of our citizens would be engaged in hearing more about it, it wouldn't be so many questions that they don't understand the answer to. So I appreciate that, their presentations. Yes, on Friday, we did meet with Congresswoman Strickland to tour the Lasso building. Very interesting. And because I was looking at the location of the new buildings to be the area down from it, it's up across from it. And so it's and I'd never been on that street before. So to go down that street and see that there's a roundabout back there, and I was surprised. So it was a great tour. She was very gracious and had lots of questions, and we were able to give her thank yous for the work that she does. And I said, I didn't know that they had a water main break during the cold spell. So they have some repairments to do on that. And I appreciate the new members on the planning commission, because that's what we need, new ideas, new thoughts and processes, and help us to understand some of the things that we might overlook as well. I was actually able to speak at the Clover Park Technical College scholarship dinner. That was Saturday night. It was very nice. The students that spoke were all in male-dominant fields, professions, yes, and they were all female. They were all female. It was very good. And courtesy of LMCC, we donated $2,000 scholarship to Clover Park Technical College. So the total for LMCC so far is like $5,000 that we've given to college. So we're excited about that. So thank you. And thank you all, because you guys all helped me to pull it together. I appreciate that. And let's see, baseball fields. Have you guys noticed how busy they are all the time? I love it. I can't wait to get to go to some of the games out there now, so. That's all I have. So if there's anything for the good of the order. Thank you, thank you. Then we are adjourned.